Thank you very much, Mir. I hope everybody can hear me okay.
Yes, we can.
Awesome. Thank you very much for confirming that. Very excited to be here. And what I wanted to talk about today is going beyond data protection. In our previous sessions, you may have heard me talk about Microsoft information protection, which essentially encompasses the data encryption, data labeling, data loss prevention, data retention policies, all the key things you need to do to have a good data protection strategy and to have a good data governance method applied to your organization or to your environment. Today, we're going to talk about something called Compliance Manager. So this is basically taking this entire data protection strategy or understanding what's the compliance posture of your environment to the next level. And you can achieve that through the Compliance Manager. So I'm going to go ahead and start sharing my screen here. And if somebody can confirm if they can see my screen.
Yes.
Perfect. All right, a little bit about me. I've been on these calls. So Ash Summer, Senior Technical Specialist. I cover the security, compliance, identity for all of the FCCC accounts, and of course, and all of the California accounts actually. My focus is the security, compliance, identity portion. Today, we're going to cover Microsoft Compliance Manager, which is a feature of Compliance Purview. I should say A5 Compliance Purview. So keep in mind this feature, this Compliance Manager feature, is not available in the A3 licensing. It's part of A5 compliance. All right, so let's go ahead and kick things off here. All right, so if we really think about it today, managing data is a challenge, right? We already know there's a number of different regulatory bodies out there who have different compliance policies. And these compliance policies always vary not only by nations, but also here by states as well. We think of, for California, we have the CCPA regulation, which is now, there's a additional amendment done, which is the CPRA amendment, which essentially says that the CCPA amendment or CCPA regulation covered the ability to have one user be able to request for their data whenever they wanted, the ability to know if the data is being sold or shared with other partners, other entities out there. The CPRA amendment gave the rights to consumers to request for that particular data to be deleted from the provider or from the particular entity, and also have the request put in place to have that information be deleted from where the data was shared by this particular entity. So, and of course, when we talk about all these regulations, there's so many of them, right? We just talked about California, which is CCPA, but on this chart, this is a bit dated. You can see if you are dealing with consumers or customers or students or faculty staff who are international or local, there are different regulations that you have to map to make sure that their data is in compliance within your environment. Another popular one is GDPR, right, which is very popular in Europe. I had one customer that wanted to make sure that they are in compliance with GDPR because they had the students trying to sign in from Europe and take classes from Europe. So As you can see, there's multiple ones over here, but there's many more that are not listed over here, which are also at the state level here in the United States. All right, so talking about Microsoft Purview Compliance Manager, how are we able to run an effective compliance posture assessment across our environment, right? Being that there are so many controls that need to be put in place, there's so much regulations at the state level, at the national level, how can we be in compliant within our own tenants? And that's where Microsoft Purview Compliance Manager comes in. The tool in itself is built to do compliance posture assessments across your environment. There's a lot of automation capabilities that are built in there, whereby the tool is doing the work and you don't have to. For the most part, you are going to follow the guided recommendations to implement a certain control within your environment to make sure your environment is secure. Now, of course, we have the intuitive management. So essentially everything is wizard-based. There's no complex coding needed. You just select the right template for your environment, whichever template you need. Go ahead and initiate that across your entire environment. And then the posture assessment is basically going to take about a day or two or so, depending on the size of your environment and the amount of data you have everywhere. And then once it's done doing that assessment, it's going to give you a set of guided recommendations, which we will see later on in my slides. Okay, and of course we have built-in capabilities. So you have the compliance score, which basically gives you a nice score letting you know how does your environment compare to the other environments that are out there, and within the same industry as well, right? If you're in healthcare, it's going to compare it with another healthcare entity. If you're in education, it's going to compare your tenant to another education tenant entity. And of course, map the controls to, what are the gaps within your environment, and then come up with that compliance score for you. So how is the compliance score calculated? So essentially we have different controls that come into mind. We have the mandatory controls, discretionary controls, preventative, detective, corrective. All these controls are measured in the underlying security or underlying compliance posture assessment of the tool. So essentially, if we find gap in any of these certain areas, we're going to go ahead and give you that guided recommendation. Now, being that when you are in a Microsoft tenant, it's a shared tenant, right? So there's a shared responsibility model that's already in place, right? When you come into our tenant. There are certain controls that need to be managed by the provider, which is Microsoft, which is us. And there's certain set of controls that you need to put in place as a consumer or customer. So of course, for our controls, you're always going to see that, it's basically 100 out of 100, because our team is consistently looking at the regulatory changes that are out there, what controls need to put in place, so on and so forth. And the engineers are constantly updating the tenant to meet those requirements. For the consumers, such as you guys, those controls will be listed out there and guided recommendations available to you. All right, so we talked about intuitive management. And then, of course, when we talk about intuitive management, pretty much everything in our Microsoft 365 ecosystem is intuitive. Everything is wizard-based. You have a nice dashboard that comes up. We give you access to some baseline templates, which I will show you just in a bit, what they are. The baseline protection template that's from Microsoft that kind of gives you a good baseline of the posture of your environment and what controls you need to put in place. Now, that's a Microsoft native template, so it's not adopted from any other control that's out there, but it's essentially our engineering team went ahead and put that together to make sure you have a good baseline for your environment. And of course, that particular template is free to the customer. And so when we talk about other templates that are out there, you have the ability to try out other premium templates. So premium templates would be the FERPA assessment template. And there's many others. If you go to the Compliance Manager website, you'd be able to not only sign up for a trial for the premium assessment templates, but also be able to see a full list of different templates that show up over there. So when I say templates, essentially templates are different regulatory controls and assessments, right? So an example would be HIPAA, example would be GDPR, CCPA, data protection baseline, which is native to us, FERPA, so on and so forth. So those are assessment templates. All right, in addition to that, we also give you the ability to customize the assessment templates. So let's say if you want to build out your own custom template or customize a existing template, you can go ahead and do that. If you want to add and remove a control, really up to you. You can go ahead and slice and dice that any which way you'd like. For the most part, I feel like the regulatory templates, they do already a better job at doing the right assessments and recommending the right controls. But again, if you want to take it one step further and customize those templates, those options are there for you, available for you. All right, let's talk about the built-in capabilities here. So we looked at this, we looked at the compliance score earlier. As you notice, you have a quantifiable figure right in front of you, letting you know that, okay, your compliance achievement is at 71%. Now, oftentimes I get customers asking me, are we ever going, so what's the idea behind this? Are we supposed to be at 100? So the answer to that is no, you don't have to be at 100, because over time, what happens is that the engineering team looks at the regulatory bodies, finds out that new provisions, any new controls that have been put in place, and they factor that into the underlying assessment template. So these controls change over time. Your environment changes over time as the turnover happens, new users come in, new devices get issued. So you won't be able to achieve a full 100%. But what we recommend is the higher the score is, the better it is for you, right? And of course, just keep following the guided recommendations that we give you. Okay, so we talked about this. It's all automated. The tool is doing the work for you. The tool has the ability to run through 100+ controls, map that to the assessment template, and then pull out the guided recommendations, and of course, like present it to you, right? How you can improve your score. And of course, for the controls that are already put in place by you and your team, we are going to go ahead and give you that credit and let you know that this control is already put in place and we have factored that score to your overall compliance score. Okay. All right, so what I wanted to do is I wanted to quickly show you the demo slides of the portal, and just to give you an idea of what it actually looks like when you have Compliance Manager put in place. So very first thing is that how do you get there, right? So it's compliance.microsoft.com, and if you have the right licensing in place, you'd be able to see Compliance Manager on the left navigation menu. Couple of key things to keep in mind is that you have to make sure that you have the right permissions and the assigned roles to be able to create assessments and to view the results. So we do have a dedicated section or Microsoft Docs page that kind of talks about which role does what. So before you dive into, I guess the first step would be assigning the A5 license to your admin accounts. The next step would be to come here, compliance.microsoft.com. And then the next step would be to make sure that you have the right permissions and roles assigned to yourself to be able to go ahead and run the assessment. Next up is you'd be able to, obviously, once you put everything in place, you'd be able to see this nice dashboard, which gives you a snapshot of your current compliance score. And then, of course, give you a nice solution catalog, what solutions are going to be suitable for your compliance needs. The tool is doing the discovery for you and making that recommendation for you. And of course, some additional controls if you have the tie-ins over here with ServiceNow and so on and so forth. Okay, and once you double click on Compliance Manager, you essentially go ahead and see your compliance score, and this is what it looks like. I want you to notice right below that compliance score, you see a section which says your points achieved. So that's mapping the templates requirements, the controls, versus what you have put in place. So in this example, you have 144 out of 5,837. So of course, with that regard, there's some work that needs to be done. But up top, you see a compliance score of 71%, and the numbers look different. Well, we also went ahead and factored in the Microsoft managed points against that overall score. So keep in mind, as stated earlier, we are going to go ahead and put in some controls from the backend because it's a shared tenant. And then, of course, there's some work that needs to be done from your side as well. On the middle section, you're going to see key improvements. So again, guided recommendations. What gaps did we find within your environment? And as you click on that, you'd be able to see what are the guided recommendations, which I will go ahead and show you just in a bit. Let me go ahead and skip ahead here. At the bottom, you have compliance score breakdown. I absolutely love this because it gives you an idea of, where does the gap actually lie? Is it with the devices? Is it with the governance piece, with the controls, with security, with the protection, and based off of that, you can get to decide, which controls need the most attention, based on your priority. So on this particular slide, I can easily see, okay, managed compliance has a 87% points where I have achieved, so which is good. I can put that all the way at the bottom. Managed devices is 6%. That's going to go in the middle, or I would say protect information will go in the middle, and managed devices is something I need to work on. So I need to achieve more points over there. Of course, the govern information, control access, discover, those are going to be probably in the very first place, because those are the areas I need to work on. Okay, and when you are doing assessments, keep in mind, you have the ability to run multiple assessments. So it doesn't have to be just one. You can initiate as many assessments as you like, as long as you have the templates available to you. And each assessment will run in parallel to the other. And of course, you are going to see the breakdown of the scoring against each individual assessment, which I think is pretty great. At the bottom, you see data protection baseline. That's what I was talking about earlier. That is available for free for you, and so is the GDPR and the NIST assessment. So you can go ahead and, right when you get A5 compliance, turn on Compliance Manager, go ahead and assign the right roles, and right away you can go ahead and run a data protection baseline assessment against your environment and probably the NIST 800 assessment. Okay, so what do the assessments actually look like once they are running or initiated. So this is a snapshot of what the assessment actually looks like. You go ahead and select the appropriate assessment. You will see the assessment progress. You have the points that you have achieved, gives you a nice chart on the right side. And it's also going to go ahead and highlight what's the impact, right, of the controls if you go ahead and put them in place. So of course, the higher scored impacts or higher points impact, those are the ones that you need to focus on. Once you select that particular control, you can go ahead and see the guided recommendations, which I will go ahead and show you just in a bit here. It also gives you a nice chart over here if you need to get an expanded view of all the different controls that were assessed against your environment. And they are nicely color-coded for you. Okay, let's talk about the improvement scores, right? So, the improvement actions. So as stated earlier, there's certain responsibilities that lie to Microsoft and our engineering team. And on the right side, you will see the Microsoft the actions that we went ahead and took into account. And we basically went ahead and put in that control on behalf of you, right? And towards the bottom, you'll see some additional controls that are presented to you that need to also be put in place. Now, those improvement actions are going to be tied to you. So you can go ahead and select a single one, which let's go ahead and see one here. So, well, just taking one step back, this is the Microsoft control that our engineers went ahead and put in place. What we end up doing is we go ahead and give you a detailed description of what we went ahead and put in place on behalf of you. So you have a nice description, you have implementation notes, test notes, whatnot. And that's all the activities of the engineering team. On the left side, we also go ahead and tell you where does this particular control apply to? And you can see it's GDPR and NIST and data protection baseline. And up top, you will go ahead and see when was this particular control put in place, which was 8/30. So something that you will do as a consumer, a customer, you will click on that particular control. So in this example, it's require mobile devices to use a password. And what we will do is we're going to give you the guided recommendation on how you can go ahead and implement this particular control within your environment. Okay, and you can obviously this particular control is tied to Microsoft Intune, so you can go, if you were to go ahead and click on Launch Now, it's going to take you over there. And of course, if you want to learn a little bit more about the control, we always point you to our Microsoft Docs page, which gives you some additional information on implementing that particular control in your environment. On the left side, again, as you try to implement this particular control, you will see all the different assessments that are going to be impacted. And then up top, once you have everything put in place, you will see the implementation date be updated for you. All right, so ultimately, the main question ends up being pricing. What does it cost? So let's go ahead and talk about this a little bit, because this is the part that becomes somewhat confusing. So as stated earlier, the A3 licensing does have the data protection baseline, and the A5 licensing also has the data protection baseline. But when you purchase the A5 compliance license or full A5, you get access to the NIST assessment template that I showed you earlier, GDPR, ISO, and you have the ability to customize the assessments as well. Now, there are additional assessment templates, which we consider them as premium assessment templates, one of which is FERPA. those are available to you at a cost. So this is beyond the A5 licensing cost. That's going to be an additional cost. And you may wonder why are we charging money for that, right? Keep in mind, the engineering team, as stated earlier, they need to go ahead and monitor these controls on a daily basis to make sure what has been added, what has been removed, tie that to the underlying premium assessment template, and make sure it's deployed and available to all of our customers. And that's why there's a cost behind that. But if you are just concerned about the, just like the baseline assessment or probably NIST 800 within your environment, you can go ahead and purchase the A5 compliance and take advantage of the data protection baseline and the NIST 800 and a few others that are available to you. And of course, if you need to have additional questions or additional conversation around the pricing, please go ahead and reach out to me or to your account manager here at Microsoft, and we can go ahead and guide you to the right path of making sure that you're able to successfully purchase the right assessment template for you. Okay. All right. So with that being said, in terms of deploying and taking advantage of the solution, obviously you have fast track services that are available to you. It's free of charge. Partners can always go ahead and come in and help you out. Fast track services is over the shoulder guidance. They won't be hands-on keyboard. If you need something a little bit much more involved in terms of executing on the assessment and then implementing the controls, taking it one step further over there for you, the partners would be a better route for you. We have workshops around Compliance Manager as well. So if you want to see maybe a proof of concept and understand what does Compliance Manager actually look like and how do the assessments actually work, we can go ahead and do a proof of concept for you or a demo for you. You have unified support that's available to you. So a unified engineer can always come in and help you guide with the execution of the assessment and the implementation of the controls. And of course, we have a bunch of Ninja training series on how to consume Microsoft Compliance Manager as well. So if you guys need links to that or some additional details around that, we can go ahead and send that out to you as well. So this is my last slide here. And what I want to do now is open the floor up for any questions. Let's see, jump into the Q&A section. Okay, so again, please feel free to drop in your questions in the Q&A section so I can go ahead and get those answered for you. All right, so first question here from Adam. It looks like Purview scans all the tenant services. Can it be extended to other cloud storage like Dropbox? So very good question. Unfortunately, we are not able to scan other cloud components like Dropbox. Right now, it's just in the Microsoft 365 ecosystem. So hopefully that answers your question. And there could be a possibility later on down the road that the engineering team may have an integration with Dropbox, but I've not seen anything on the roadmap as of yet. Okay. Any other questions? Please, you can go ahead and come off mute or go ahead and drop it in the Q&A chat. I can go ahead and read it out loud and answer it for you. Oh, very good question. So this is from Rupinder. What compliance templates are included in the A5 license? So let me go ahead and show you that here. So this slide over here, you'll see at the bottom, the data protection baseline, the NIST 853, ISO 27001, GDPR, and custom assessments are available in A5. A5 compliance as well. So hopefully that answers your questions, question, Rupinder. Any other questions? Sure, you're welcome. Okay. All right, so if there's no other questions, then I'm going to go ahead and hand it off to Amir to take over from here, and I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing.